Hello. For my historical reconstruction presentation, I'm going to be doing Tang Xianzu. He's often called the Shakespeare of China because he was an influential playwright in China that lived from 1550 to 1616. He worked as an official in the civil service from the age of 21 until he was 49. He did a little bit of writing while he was there, starting at the age of 34, as he held various low-level government positions. Um, and when he retired at the age of 49, he did that to begin writing full-time um, until his death in 1616. He died as a recognized playwright in the same year as William Shakespeare, which was 1616, and these facts, along with many of his accomplishments, garnered him the nickname the Shakespeare of China, although that is a slightly problematic nickname for him to have, as we tend to compare Eastern playwrights to the West when they should be seen as their own people, and their own writing styles should be respected as their writing styles, instead of for their similarities to people in the West. Um, However, that is a nickname that he goes by, so it is something I wanted to address. Some of his many accomplishments include the plays he wrote. Um, these are translated into English: The Purple Flute, The Purple Hairpin, The Peony Pavilion, The Record of Handan, and The Record of Southern Bao. And then Mu Dang Ting is The Peony Pavilion, untranslated. Um, the plays that he wrote, there are four of them. They're collectively known as the Four Dreams. The two records that he wrote are historical plays instead of dream sequence plays. Um, but he wrote four dream sequence plays, and they are collectively known as the Four Dreams. Mu Dang Ting, or the Peony Pavilion, is China's historically most popular play due to how he portrays love and true love in the play. It was popular at the time, but also has remained popular throughout the years in China. Um, Although the Four Dreams are called the Four Dreams, they are separate plays. They're not set in the same universe or anything. Um, he wrote plays during the time that they were performed as operas instead of just being read out loud as plays. So these would have been sung um, in Chinese um, on stage as an opera, and he is considered one of China's greatest playwrights back in the time that he was writing, but more so after he died during the Qin dynasty, and then up until today, his plays are still performed in China almost as often as Shakespeare's plays are performed in Europe and America. Ming Dynasty theater as a whole, because he lived at the end of the Ming Dynasty. It was in a period of Renaissance very similar to the West. Many new ideas were being developed, many new forms of theater were taking place, and Tang was able to capitalize on that as he wrote more, um, and also sort of form the movement a bit. Theater became extremely popular in China near the end of the Ming Dynasty during the Renaissance. Plays began to shift from focusing on just sophisticated word crafting, such as poetry, and instead also shifted to those that could be actively performed. So instead of plays just being often read and only performed sometimes and being written to be read, they were written to be performed. Um, the plays also started to focus a lot more on the actual music of the opera instead of on like how the writing sounded and how the words were crafted. Um, Kunkyu was developed, which was in a large part due to Tang's writing, and became a way to perform the plays as operas. Not just plays written during the time or by Tang, but plays written in the past as well. They were written and rewritten and made into operas that could be performed. And Kunkyu is a form of musical drama that I will talk about. Um, as I said, it's a form of musical drama. It encompasses dance, poetic language, and music, along with other performance techniques to create something entertaining and greater than the sum of its parts. Um, it's often compared to Western musicals of like even up until now, but also of the time. Although, as I said before, it should exist as its own art form first instead of always being compared to things in the West. Um, a musical drama was fairly new for the Chinese theater during the Ming Dynasty, and it became very popular because of how new it was. In the past, plays weren't really performed, and operas focused pretty much only on text. And while poetic language is still a big part of Kunkyu, dance and music are equal, if not greater parts, um, which was a very new thing. Um, Kunkyu became much more about performance than text. As I kind of said before, Tang's works were always more about the text than the performance, and that is why they continue to be so successful. So Tang took this new development that focused on dance and music and put the same emphasis on his text, not necessarily in the form of poetic language to be read as it was before, but just into like what he wrote in the text. He put a very big emphasis in the words that were sung in these operas, and as I think I said before, all of Tang's plays would have been sang as a Kunkyu opera. Some were adapted into other forms of theater during his life or even later, but he was writing for Kunkyu opera first and foremost. Um, his most popular play, which was Mu Dang Ting, or The Peony Pavilion, um, is set in the Southern Song Dynasty, which is years before. Um, it features a romance between Du Linalang and Liu Mengmei, and that is one of the reasons it was so popular. Romance stories were very popular during the time of Kunkyu and still are today, and it's one of the reasons that this play remains popular to this day in China. In the play, Du Linlang takes a walk in the garden one day and eventually falls into a dream sequence. In her dream, she encounters Liu Menmei, and he is a young scholar, but she has never actually met him in her real life, although we find out that he is in fact a real person. The romance blossoms, but she's unable to cope without her true love because he's only in her dream, and this eventually causes her to die of a broken heart, which was another trope of the time that was very popular in Chinese media of various types, but mostly in their musicals and their operas. Um, then in the second act, Satan, or translated as the president of the underworld, thinks that the two should be together, Du and Liu, and resurrects Du. Um, and she is resurrected, but then her father goes to mourn and sees that the grave is empty. But of course, he doesn't believe in the resurrection, so he blames Liu as a grave robber. And he attempts to get him punished as such. Um, Du and Liu end up needing to escape together, and they end up narrowly escaping. And something that is another trope in um, Chinese opera at the time is that at the end they live happily ever after and end up being pardoned by the emperor for the crimes, although they weren't actually crimes, but they are pardoned by the emperor and are able to live happily together because of that. Yeah, so that is Tang's most popular play, and something like at the time, but also still today, and it is a reason that he is so highly regarded in China and is regarded as the Chinese Shakespeare by the West. Yeah, thank you.